Welcome everyone to our Leadership Academy project series. It is very nice to see you guys here today. My name is Monica Dreyer Rossi, and I am the program manager for the American Indian and Alaska Native Leadership Academy. Next slide, please. Good. Yeah, okay, great, thank you. So today we are hosting the second session, no, actually the third session of the project series. Participants in the Leadership Academy work on their own community-based initiatives throughout the one-year program. During this series, they will present their work to you. The series discuss on-the-ground initiatives focusing on improving important aspects of American Indian and Alaska Native communities' well-being. The series addresses different aspects of community health and describes projects that have impacted communities across the country. Here you can see a picture of the Leadership Academy 3 and the graduation in San Diego in 2021. Our speaker today is in the picture and was one of the mentees in this cohort. Next slide, please. The session is presented to you by the National American Indian and Alaska Native Prevention TTC and Addiction TTC located at the University of Iowa in Iowa City. We are a part of a national network of technology transfer centers, as you can see from the slide shown here. Next slide, please. This program is funded by SAMHSA, but the content and opinions expressed is not necessarily a reflection of the views and policies of our funder. Next slide. Here is an overview of the series. We have 6 sessions scheduled, and today Maria Molina will be presenting her project to you. Next slide, please. Towards the end of the session, please take a few moments to give us your feedback. We would really appreciate hearing from you about what you think about these sessions and how the organization of them were. It will be a link in the chat towards the end of the session that you can respond to, but we will also send out a follow-up email after the event where you can respond to the survey, and you can also find information there about how to receive certificates of participation. I want to thank Taylor Magnuson and Sarah Adams, who are here with us today. They are our graduate students and are helping supporting these events. And I also want to give thanks to our director, Dr. Anna-Helene Skinstad. Next slide, please. This is our center's land acknowledgement authored by Keely Driscoll, Ella Driscoll, and Sean Bear, all of them from the Meskwaki settlement here in Iowa. I will give you a moment to read the land acknowledgement. We're so glad to have you here. Our speaker today is, as I said, Maria Molina. Maria, you live in Arizona, and she is a clinical social worker, and she will be presenting her project, Healing is Resistance, Recovery is as Liberation. So I will leave it to you from here, Maria.
Okay, so it's still, well, it's late morning here. It's 11 p.m. I'm here in Tucson, Arizona. You know, the lands of the Tohono O'odham peoples, the Yaqui peoples, the Opi peoples. So many different peoples that have migrated through these territories and been stewards of these lands. And so here in Tucson, it's actually comes from an O'odham word, Chukshon. And that happens all over, right? There's places that have the names in their original tongue, and when people come try to say it, they'll try to say something close. So that's where we came up with Tucson. So yo soy Chenyawu. My name is Maria Molina. I'm part of the Yaqui tribe. I'm also Tlamanalca tribe. And so I just feel really humbled and honored to be able to have this opportunity, just to be able to let my, it's not just my voice, because I represent an entire people. And so it's always very humbling to be able to have some space to share, some things that we think are of value and that are really important. So yes, I'm a clinical social worker, and I currently serve as a clinical program manager for the residential programs that we have here on the Pascua Yaqui Reservation. And I'm excited to talk about the project, because the project isn't just, it wasn't just a project, it was actually an opportunity that really helped propel me into this work that I've been doing here in this program. And so I'm so thankful that I had the opportunity to participate, and I really miss it. So just thank you to the staff and the program for always including us and thinking of us and giving us the chance to be able to check back in and touch base, because it really helps keep the motivation going too. Okay, so what we're talking about today, that kind of came from my project, is the healing. That healing is resistance. As Indigenous peoples, we always talk about thriving and opportunity and always continuing to transcend as a people, talking about the resiliency that we have. And at the same time, it's also too important that we've been doing this in the context of active, attempted genocide that continues today, so it can be kind of challenging to be healing, transcending, going to school, all the different things that we do, while at the same time, there's still active attacks against our people. And we have a lot of healing to trauma to heal from, right? And so recovery as liberation is the basis and the foundation for all the work that I do, because we have to know what we need to be liberated from and heal from in order to be able to have health. And so I wanted to just share a little story, and before we talk specifically about the project, it's kind of about why the project came to be. And I thought that was a really important insight to give. And so I wanted just to share this. This is just one side of my family. So that there is my Nana Maria. Her name is Maria Amasios. Her last name is Tosai Kawaikamen, which is they raise the white horses. And so my Nana, and that there is my Tata. We call him Tata Juan Mosen, Tata John. He comes from the Mosen family, Bakasewa family, and they're both Yaqui, and they both, my Nana, she was actually born in Sonora, so she was born on the other side of what they call, this border. She was born out there, and my Tata, we're not 100% sure because he was orphaned. And so I like to talk about them because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the strength that they have. And it just tells a little bit about my lineage as a Yaqui Tlamanalca. And so when my Tata was an orphan, he was orphaned. His Nana, his mom, they had to pull him out of a tent after they had found that she had been dead for a couple of days. And so he doesn't really know family. He knows that he had twin sisters, but doesn't know much about them. And so he was basically taken in as a slave when he was a really young boy, 5, 6 years old. He was known to always be barefoot, not having any clothes. He was used for really hard labor at such a young age. And, he would get tied, they would keep him tied to a tree. And, there's all these horrific things that he survived from, and when he was really young, he was about 7 years old. He tried running away he tried jumping on a train and he ended up getting hurt. And so he always had this big scar here. He was a little boy. You know, when you think about a 7-year-old child, it's just so unimaginable to try to think about what the thought process would be. You know, it's just a survival, trying to run away. And so that family found him and brought him back, and they burned the bottom of his feet so that he couldn't run away again. And my nana here, she got to know him. You know, she would take him food where they would keep him tied up, and she would go take him scraps of food because he wouldn't get to eat very much. You know, he used to go out into the fields, you know. And then it was recent that my dad was kind of sharing stories and, you know, getting emotional and things about it. And that's why it's kind of been more fresh on my mind. But, you know, he was sharing that my tata told him, my dad was sharing, my tata told him that he used to go out into the fields and he would pick, you know, the dry wheat, and he would kind of try to scrush it up as much as possible and put water, or if he had goat milk, then he would, you know, try to kind of eat that when he was out there. But so my nana would bring him some food here and there. And so as they grew up together, then they ended up, you know, well, they were kind of forced to get married. You know, I grew up thinking that it was this amazing love story, but then came to find out that they were actually forced to be together, which was okay, you know, and they ended up having all these children and this family and settling. You know, my nana's, our ancestry, one of our ancestors is Medweoshkakwe, who was a Yaqui warrior. So when the wars were happening, when he was captured and killed, his bloodlines were threatened. And so that's how that lineage of my family ended up coming up north, was because we had to flee. And so that's kind of contributes to how they ended up meeting each other. And so, and, you know, to me, it's still a beautiful story when I think about it. But then there's all this, this trauma, you know, that comes from that. And so I was wanting to put tons of stuff here, you know, on this slide to talk about, you know, why I am where I am in this role that I am working and serving my tribe this way. And so, you know, some of the things something that really sticks to me is hearing my tias talking, you know, about when they were little girls and when they were kids, and they would talk about, you know, because the Yaquis came up north and just kind of settled wherever the water was, you know, they would settle there. And they were talking about how it just seemed like everybody went crazy because everybody was just starving. There was no food, you know, there was a lot of trauma. And they talked about that and how people started drinking, and there was just a lot of violence that was happening in the community. And those are kind of things that are like a given, you know, that we know is part of what our survival has looked like because of colonialism. But then hearing stories that are so super fresh and close, you know, it's just so shocking sometimes when we think about how, well, first of all, that we're alive, you know, because we shouldn't have been here, you know. So first of all, that we're alive, and then that we have opportunities and so many amazing gifts that were left to us by our ancestors in order to be able to heal ourselves, you know, and in order to be able to continue the way that we were intended to. From our original cultures. And so I just have a bunch of things on this slide, you know, that's me on the top left. I don't know how old I was there, but I wanted to just share a little bit about my experience that, you know, some trigger warnings, you know, about, you know, violence and alcoholism, mental illness. I'm going to go soft for sure. But so yeah, I grew up and I was looking at that picture when I was doing this, and I was feeling a little bit sad, you know, because I remember being really scared a lot when I was growing up, because I had alcoholism in the home, both my parents, and my mom had has bipolar disorder. So my mom, she was depressed a lot, and also, she would have psychotic episodes. So there was kind of like this fear that was just always a fear of unpredictability about who my mom was going to be. And then there was also this reality of an incapacity to be nurtured and mothered and cared for. And, my dad was really violent. He would hurt my mother. He would physically assault her pretty regularly. And so those things really impacted me, but that wasn't really something that I was aware of until much later in life. And so as I grew up, I started drinking at a really young age, and I never thought about whether I should be doing this or not. It was just so normal. It was such a normal part of who I was, and so was the violence. And so I was always fighting, I was always acting out. I wasn't well without realizing that I wasn't well. I did a lot of self-harm. I wasn't, it was all a lot of, what we see happens generationally, right? When there's so much instability. And so, and I also put things on this slide that show kind of like the resiliency pieces, when up on the top right there, that's the deer dancer for our tribe, that is pretty much everything that is beautiful, and that's something that I always grew. Like I remember being a little girl and just being completely mesmerized by the deer dancer, and so there was all these beautiful things about who I was and how I grew up. And at the same time, there was all these other things that were harmful and hurtful and even dangerous, and that I kind of grew up with these two realities at once. And the thing that, I put this picture of the Washington, the X team's name, right? We're not going to say that R word, but I put that there because that was my team, that was my team growing up. And I felt a lot of pride about that team. And so there was just so many things in my reality that I was not aware of that were impacting me in one way or another. And so, and so here on the left side, we have the manifest destiny baby, right? Like going over the land across, like where all Native people are, and Christianizing and all those things, right? There's just so many complex things about being indigenous and being just absorbed in this world. And when you don't have the capacity to think about those things critically, then there's a lot of things that we're not aware of. And so so it's like a complicated slide that I could probably do a whole other presentation on, and I'm not going to. And there's a lot of things in my story that I've survived and gone through. But I want to share that, I went through my own recovery, as a human being, as a mother, trying to get my children back into my custody, having to go through substance use treatment, grief, all these different things. And then also raising children who have been impacted by not just the acute trauma that they experienced in my womb, or with me trying to raise them early on, but also generationally. And that's a really important piece of this work and this project, is that generational trauma and everything that's represented on these slides about how harmed and hurt we are without even being aware sometimes of the root cause of those things. Okay, and so I wanted to share some of these things because that root cause is where some of that work needs to be done, or at least creating awareness about that root cause. And so on the bottom left there, that's my family. That's me, that's my husband. That was on his birthday. It was a surprise, and they got him a Super Dad shirt he was really happy about. And those are our 6 children. And that picture is from maybe a year ago. So the boy on the left is like a lot taller now. But I just wanted to share that. And then also, these ladies here in the center are all part of where a lot of my strength comes from too. So things to touch on, because when I went through my healing process, these were very necessary elements and processes that were present for me. So I ended up at the Women's Path program, which is one of the programs that I now manage here on the reservation. So I went through that program as a client, as somebody that was in need of recovery. And so things that I found in my process for healing were, number one, I had the opportunity to nurture myself. So I never had a relationship with my body. My nervous system was always activated. I was able to get into a sweat lodge and notice body sensation for the first time that wasn't coming from self-harm, right? So I had that opportunity to nurture my intellect and critical thought, and also just my generations, right? Like who I am, where I come from. And so a lot of that was that reflection of just like my identity, figuring out who I am in this space time, in the context of you know, my culture, my family, where I am geographically. You know, there's so many different things, and I had the opportunity to reflect on those. I got to experiment and experience healing, right? So land-based healing and element-based healing, because we know that these elements are our life givers and sustainers. And I hadn't had, you know, that relationship to the elements, and I was able to engage in that and to start learning that I was an active participant in my ecology and my environment, you know, and those are the things that you hear growing up, but it was the first time that I had the opportunity to start figuring out what that even meant, and maybe leave an offering, or even just recognizing that there had been some kind of exchange between myself and the earth, or myself and, you know, this desert, or whatever the circumstances. I had to learn about those things. And then I had the opportunity for reconciliation. So, you know, kind of closing that loop of the past, the present, the future, because I was able to recognize and understand my history, where I was going, who I am, and how that's a continuum. And then I was able to have empowerment, you know, figuring out who I was, starting to love myself, and even have hope and to trust myself. And I had the opportunity to be, you know, immersed in my tribe and in my community, and really learn what us determination is versus self-determination, right? And then I was able to, with that critical thought and learning, understand the importance of resistance and how that's embedded in our culture as Indigenous people. So I had to go through this process, and it says the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off. I was angry for a while when I started learning, you know, why things were the way that they were. You know, I had to go through that process, and sometimes I have a healthy anger that comes from that still, that I am very open and, well, you know, inviting of, because it continues to help fuel this movement that we're participating in, this resistance. And so the opportunity came along. I had no idea what I was going to do. You know, I got a directive from our health director, who's a tribal leader, and said, do this project, you know. So I was really blessed and fortunate to have the opportunity, but I really had no idea what I was going to do. I want to give a shout out to my mentor. Her name is Carly Blemmel. And I was going to say how I mentor, but I don't want to give that away if it's like a surprising part of the process. So I'm not going to do that. But when I met Carly, I really wanted her to be my mentor, because she was this badass woman who was using stickball to teach people for prevention, right? So she was using culture in the work that she was doing. And it was so cool, because when I met her, she had a black eye from playing, and it's just the coolest thing to see this amazing Native woman and the work that she was doing in her community. And so I got to work on the project, and the piece about the perfect timing happened because I had a position change around that time. But what really helped me to kind of refine and figure out what I was wanting to do was that the program asked that we interview 2 elders in the community. And I thought that was the coolest thing, to be able to interview these 2 elders. So I interviewed Daniel Vega, who was the language and cultural director, who's an amazing, beautiful person. So I was able to interview him, and then I interviewed my tia here, who's a cultural participant, has done amazing work in Sonora, where our motherlands are, to empower women. And so I asked them, and they both kind of had the same, underlying thought, which was, from Daniel, it's like, well, we need to know what our values are, because we're using a colonizer lens right now to solve all of our problems. And we can, like, for us, it's so easy to say culture, 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 but sometimes they don't want it. Like, why? What is going on? Like, we need to go back and look at how we're viewing the world. And we can't do that until we know what our values are. And so my tia was the same thing. It's what about our perspectives? What about our teachings about culture? And how are we using that to help our community? What kinds of opportunity, like, because the culture is so available, what's the missing piece here? That it's no longer helping our people the ways that it should. So that really motivated me. And because I was still new to behavioral health, I was new to being a social worker. I was new to all of these things, and I didn't quite know how much of that was appropriate to include, because I went to an institution like ASU and I learned how to be a professional, right? And there's like boundaries and all these things. And so I wasn't quite sure. And this really kind of gave me that, like, of course we have to use this. It doesn't matter what anybody said, because this is the thing that is actually really most important for our people. And so my original goal, the main part of it, was bringing back the traditional hunt, because at that time I was able to get into position as the manager for the men's residential facility. So I got moved to men's path, and it's like, oh, easy, we'll revitalize the hunt. We're gonna, they'll learn, they'll use mindfulness, they'll use all these skills, all these things that have been shown to be evidence-based, right? That are effective, that are healing and helpful. And we're gonna bring the deer to our community. Like, I thought that was the most amazing thing. I still do, but to be able to give them an opportunity to, reclaim their relationship to land and ecology and to the deer, because we're deer people, and also to be able to nurture and feed the people. I thought that it just sounds so easy, right? And so that was part of my original goal. And of course, providing the men at that time opportunity to have cultural engagement. And then, of course, still using things that have been evidence-based, things that have worked, right? And at the same time, infusing culture into those things. So that was the original project goal. And once I had some reality checks, which we'll get into, I had to kind of modify it a little bit, okay? So I think that what was more foundational at the time was we need to be trauma informed, right? Like at the basic level. And so the stuff with the hunt, it's still there, like there's things that are still there, but there was a lot of groundwork that needed to happen first. And so getting into the program, I'll just kind of briefly show you in a bit, but so getting into the program, I was able to see some of the more basic things that we needed. So definitely what kind of interventions we were using. We're a tribe, where's the tribe, where's the family, bringing family in, giving them opportunities. We have so many services here and resources, so making sure that we infuse those things. We really needed and still need a sober living home, especially after hearing what some of y'all might have heard what's going on in Arizona with these recovery homes. And having a program that's rooted in cultural identity, resistance, and resiliency, community healing, and restorative justice practice, and effective evaluation project. So this kind of became the later focus that was still part of my project goal. And so some of the things that when I came into the program was that we had these senior staff that had been kind of leads. They'd been here for a really long time and just got promoted because they had been here for a really long time. For those of you working in Indian country, I know that that could be a lot of strength, but it can also make it really difficult to, to nurture change in any program, right? There was a revolving door of people coming in and out of program. And I'm talking like 3 people per week at times, just people coming in and out, in and out. There wasn't too much therapeutic intervention. There wasn't too much structure in the programming, and it wasn't safe. It wasn't safe for staff to work there. It wasn't safe for participants to be coming in. It was literally not safe because of violence, also being perpetrated by staff, that not physical violence, but violence, right? And then the program at the time was based on 12 steps, and 12 steps was never meant to be a residential inpatient program, right? So there was a lot of changes that needed to happen. Some of the challenges for the project was pushback, right? Because I came onto the team part of Men's Path program as a woman in a program that had all male staff, right? And so there was pushback. There was a lot of, well, we always did it this way, or that's not how this person used to do it. I would hear a lot about that. There was a lot of pushback. And then of course, trying to just nurture a relationship and have, the leadership, right? Like how do you move people and motivate people? That was one of the challenges at the time. And I have to mention the colonialism, patriarchy, and misogyny. There was a lot of misogyny. That was a really big piece of this. Women needed to be in their place. I had no value in that space. We were using paradigms to try to treat people that weren't ours and weren't working, and it didn't seem that there was no motivation to do anything different. It was unsafe. Like there was a lot of, with the next point, the lateral violence piece, people that were working there, men that were working there actively were trying to ruin my reputation, discredit me, create false narratives about me. It was really hard. And the internalized oppression piece was that people weren't seeing that any of these things were wrong. Like there wasn't anything wrong with how we were just, we were contributing to people's oppression, right? Like we were pathologizing our own people and telling them what was wrong with them rather than looking at what's right with us. Look at all our strengths. Like how could we come together as a people and meet our own needs? There was all this crisis going on. Generational trauma is real. People talk about it, you read about it, but when it comes to really looking at how generational trauma plays out in communities, that takes a lot more work. And we, being more generous with applying that when it comes to people's day-to-day behaviors is really important. And I think that was a piece that was missing. And the approach was very punitive at the time. So we were punishing people for their trauma symptoms. And then trying to work with other programs was really difficult, trying to work with our language and culture, trying to work with different departments that really could help move this goal was hard. The workload, of course, we were on Indian time, right? It's hard to set meetings and things with people. And then COVID happened too. But then with the opportunities, was that my position expanded and we opened these 2 facilities here. We opened them up, and so we all of a sudden had a men's and a women's residential facility that were 10-bed capacity, and then also expanded my position to include 5 transitional treatment homes. So it gave us a lot more room to make changes in the programming, and then I had all of a sudden 17 staff capacity to be able to work with. And so that was amazing because, finally, after taking years to get, I don't want to say get rid of, but to move people, from a position that they weren't being of benefit to the community into something different took a long time. And then the fact that we have tribal leadership, our our health director has been here for a really long time, and he's a tribal member. So he's very open and supportive to things that we want to do to meet the needs of the people. And then we're a sovereign nation. We have flexibility. You know, we just have to find people that are willing to use it and stretch it when it comes to things like behavioral health. And then culture. So this is a really big piece of things for me here. So culture and the liberation piece. So the inpatient substance use treatment homes, the 2 homes that we had, and we're treating really vulnerable people, right? People coming in that have no sense of self, who they are, connection to culture, ceremony, and things. And it's an opportunity for identity formation, community healing, and acceptance is a big piece. Having safety and being loved, right? That we had the opportunity to create a space where we can demonstrate unconditional love and acceptance towards people, right? And that's not usually the framework that behavioral health systems are using when they're providing services. You don't even use the word love, right? It's kind of like a taboo word. And so creating a space where people are safe, loved, and accepted is such a big opportunity. Decolonizing is really important. Like, what are the things that we're doing? Where did they come from? And whose interests are they serving? And when we looked at the quality of services and the outcomes, we knew that it wasn't serving us. So creating a space for reflection of values and rebuilding through our own paradigms, because when people go into systems, they modify themselves into those systems, right? So what if we can have a space where everything about it belonged to you? What if we could create that space where you have access to who you are and nobody's telling you that's not important right now, right? That's going to be the focus of who we are in our healing. And it's an opportunity for the transmission of traditional teachings, language, responsibilities, and obligations, right? So like, if people have not been in recovery, they've been actively using, and they've been disconnected from tribe, from community, from ceremony because of their behaviors, there's a cutoff, right? And we needed a place for people to be reconnected into that despite what they've done and the things that have happened because of their addiction. Cultural participation, it nurtured a community recovery support system. We're healing centered here, right? So it's beyond being trauma informed and saying what happened to you. It's looking at the community and saying what's right with us. Like what have we been doing that has kept us alive up to this point? Knowing our history, using a critical lens, and recovery as healing and resistance, right? So this kind of became the fuel. Like, there's these really messed up things that have and continue, and we're trying to function in these systems to heal. They're not working. What can we do, right? And just really nurturing that in the people and in the staff, right? Because we have more staff, because we have to start there, but in the people that we're serving. And so nurturing activism and community responsibility is very empowering. So now we're looking at the revamp of the programs that come from the project. And this is a picture of my dad here. I wanted to show it. This is one, I think he said he was maybe like 8 years old. And so he was a matachini dancer, and he was a malichi, which meant that the expectation was that he would grow up and lead, be a lead in that. But I just wanted to share this I think I shared it earlier, but it's the cutest thing. So I try to include it in as many presentations as I can. Okay, so the revamp of the program. So now, because it's 2 homes, right? They're the Path to Recovery homes. They're called the Tuiriavi Chavos, which means Path to Recovery. Okay, so our vision and our mission statement now. Our vision is walking the path of our ancestors to grow to our fullest potential and heal tribal communities. Our mission is to provide a healing and justice-centered safe space for Indigenous peoples to engage in collective healing and recovery from substance use, trauma, and other behavioral health challenges through individual and group therapy, case management, community and family engagement, life skills and psychoeducational groups, cultural activities, and support to transition back into the community. And so these are the values of our program. They're love is number one, right? It's what drives our desire to create healing spaces to begin with. Culture is the foundation, the source, and the cure. Empowerment gives us the tools to build a life of recovery. Opportunity is what we deserve to live our fullest potential. Community is what holds us up and is a place to give back. Collective healing is the result of our commitment to recovery. Liberation, we can work towards a collective liberation from colonization and addiction. And life, we all deserve to be here. So these are our program values. Okay, and then our commitment is, of course, being able to say that active colonialism is hurting us. Okay, and we have to recognize that if we're going to make true change as a people, right? And so we're committed to that. We're committed to providing safety and empowering our participants. And we want to give them this knowledge for them to use as tools, because people deserve to know what happened and why. That's the really important piece is why. Like, why do we end up here in treatment? You know, and no, it's not like, you know, we don't want to be looking at our parents and saying, well, my dad did this thing to me, or my mom was this way. Well, what happened to them? You know, and what happened to them? Like, where did this all start? Because when we look at this, we haven't had true stability and harmony since the invasion, right? We haven't had that. And so we've been in this survival response. And yes, there's been so much healing. And yes, we can look at different tribal communities. When you look at our tribal community, it's amazing, right? We have all of these systems and services, and things are advancing so much. And so there's all this beauty, true, that's very true. And at the same time, there's a lot of disharmony, disconnection. You know, there's a lot of very real things that are still happening in our communities, and it's important for us to understand where that comes from. And then again, like with the culture piece, letting people know. So this is all part of our program communication, right, to potential people and to the community, is to let them know that our program is founded in the knowledge that our communities must heal from within through the values, teachings, traditions, and medicines our ancestors left us. So we provide for healing through cultural and ceremonial practice. So we make sure that people know that is very foundational for our programs. And then, so some of the opportunities that people have when they're in the program are the sweat lodge, you know, being able to engage in that reflection with the elements, having talking circles, having community wellness engagement, because it's important to heal your relationship to land and community also. You know, we've caused a lot of harm when we're in our addiction. We've done some horrific things in different spaces that we grew up in, right? So land-based and community-based healing is really important. And meeting with Council of Elders is like a new thing that we're going to try when our participants are ready to go back into the community. They're going to be meeting with the Council of Elders so that they can get feedback, so that they can state what their intentions are and what things they're going to do. So activism, right? Let's go to Orange Shirt Day. Like, let's go to this MMIW event. What can we do, right? So we're teaching them about these very real social issues that impact our people, and we're getting them out into the community to go participate. We have book club, you know, we teach them about issues that have and continue to impact Indigenous people, so that people can start to see what the education system has done to our people, so that they can see what things like religion have done to our people, right? What the medical field has done to our people. So we're teaching them about these things, because you know what, they already knew it. They already knew it, but we haven't really had the language to be able to talk about it, or, you know, the opportunity to talk about it, to then have an understanding of what those things might be. And then, so the dismantling colonialism piece is really important, because when you can come in here and you can recognize that the reason why I ended up here, or the reason why I wasn't able to be a healthy mother to my children, was because of what happened, is because of the trauma that our people have experienced. That's why. If I was in a different space, in a different time, without colonialism and attempted genocide having happened, I would have been a different mother. If I would have been connected in my community and we would have been living our values, I would have been a different mother, right? And so if we can understand the root cause of why we are where we are, it takes away a whole lot of shame. And it allows for reconciliation with parents that raised us the best way they could or couldn't, right? Grandparents that raised them the best way that they could or couldn't. And so making sure that we dismantle those things and understand why we are where we are is very healing and it's very empowering. We have language classes. Hopefully we can start them back up again after COVID. And then the cultural engagement pieces are all present in the program. And what I wanted to talk about, I'm getting close. What I wanted to talk about with this project that I think is really important that needs to be said is that some of the things that needed to be changed in this work to provide services this way. Number one is neutralizing power dynamics, right? We are our people. We're here to serve because that's the way that we were taught. Not to be of service, but oh, by the way, tell people what to do, decide what's better for them, make them feel, like they need to be worthy of services. No, neutralizing that power dynamic is number one, because then we can have a real people-to-people relationship without coming across as behavioral health, experts or anything like that. So neutralizing that power dynamic and then looking at what professionalism, the ways that it has limited us, how to talk to people, what you can say, how to approach them. All of these things, I had to kind of go through this process and recognize, how I say things and the way that I say them should not be policed because I'm a social worker. And of course we have to practice ethically, right? We have to practice ethically. We have to cause, do no harm. But at the same time, we have to look at, and again, it comes down to colonialism. It comes down to white supremacy and the things that are accepted as good, not good, right? What makes you sound smart? What makes you sound not smart, right? So there's all these different ways that we're being policed and especially being groomed into a profession. And those are very important things to dismantle and look at, because if we really want to show up for our people as our true authentic selves, we need to do that work. And being unapologetic about our indigeneity, taking up space and using the words for what things are. Because a lot of times we don't know what's inappropriate. We don't want to get in trouble, right? But we have to recognize that when we have a platform or we have the opportunity to advocate and we're not calling things what they are, then we're not doing justice for our people. And again, our values are the most important thing. And that is just remembering to serve those values, right? And again, these are values that we have to reflect on what our original values as a people are, right? Not mainstream values, American ideals, none of those things, right? It's really looking at our ancestry, our ancestors, the ways of living, our relationship to land, to time, to one another, all of those things. Those are foundational. And being trauma-informed, but for real. Not just saying we're trauma-informed, but really carving out time to support staff, to talk about these things as staff, right? Because we all carry these things, to carve out the time to talk to staff and participants together, because there is their power dynamic, right? We're all just people and we all have to be accountable when we do cause harm, right? And then having a liberation praxis, right? Like this is the things that we learned. This is what we tried. Did this work or did this not work? Okay, then what can we do differently next time, right? So we have to be open to always learning. The calling things what they are is like naming things, I already touched on that. And then just remembering what the real work is. Don't lose sight of the important stuff, right? We have to hold on to what our passions are and what our intentions are. And because it's easy to get caught up in different things, it's easy to have ideas and take those ideas and have to kind of sanitize them or soften them, you know. And again, when we do that, when we compromise too much, then we're not doing justice, right, for the people. And then so just as continued goals, you know, this project to me is I mean, it's done, right? Like it ended, our project ended, but it's not, you know. So to me, it's something that we're just gonna keep building on. And so with this hunt, you know, yes, there's like the expenses, there's like red tape with license, there's like all these things, but it's still something that we're wanting to do some sustainability projects to have more land-based healing. And then just what else, you know, it's always what else, because there can always be more. And then another thing is not everything's for everybody, right? Including, you know, the decolonizing practices, or, you know, having that as a focus, or even having culture as a focus. That's not for everyone. Not everybody's ready for that. And it's important to mention that this is not something that we're prescribing, but is available. And at the same time, there's opportunities for other things, you know, the 12 steps, going to church, you know, DBT, CBT, you know, all these other interventions are still available, because we want to make sure that we have whatever we can for people to use that they think is going to be in their benefit. And then we need, it's with this work, it's really important to be mindful about everyone, because we want to make sure we bring everybody along, right? And you know, it's talked about how liberation, how our liberation is tied to our colonizers' liberation, right? We're all tied to one another. And so we want to make sure that we bring everybody along in this work, because when there's healing for some, we want to make sure that there's healing for everyone. And so planting these seeds, whether or not people want to act on them, at least once you know, right? That's the really important thing, is once you know, and they get to take these seeds, whatever they learned, and they can continue to use that, our participants in their life. Once they leave our program, then of course they can always come back and give back and participate in the cultural pieces and the ceremonies and what else, and anything else that we have to offer. So I know I went a little bit over, but if anybody had any questions that they wanted to ask, or any comments, but you know, just in closing, to say again that I'm super thankful for the opportunity to have been able to participate in this leadership program. It was really amazing, and I learned a lot from it. I feel like I was really able to grow a lot from that. And so I'm super thankful for that always.
Maria, thank you so much for your presentation. I really appreciate you sharing about your history, your family, and the work you're doing. And we already have some questions. We have one question in the chat here to everyone here. Feel free to post your question here or raise your hand, so we still have some time where we can talk and share and ask questions to Maria about her project. So Dana is asking, do you have examples of community wellness and cultural engagement activities? What evidence-based programming is utilized?
So yeah, with community things, it's going to like Orange Shirt Day. It's hosting a community talking circle, or hosting a sweat lodge, or like, you know, we're really fortunate here to have equine. We have a ranch, so we were able to take the guys out there with family and with other families. So it's not just that they're people in recovery, but they get to be around family, right? And then so we also have our annual ceremonial obligations that we make sure that we're taking people to participate in. Because unfortunately, we don't always have the best approach when it comes to our cultural leaders. You know, what happens sometimes is if say if somebody gets caught smoking weed, you know, in the shed, then you can't participate this year. You know, so there's a lot of isolation that happens. And so we just want to make sure that we're infusing people into the community, because they lose access to opportunity. We take them out to this program out here in Tucson. It's called Bikes, and they're able to do work hours there and earn bikes. And so I've been in communication with one of our council women leaders about doing recovery rides on the roads. And so we want to be visible, and at the same time ask community to join us in what we're doing to get well, because it's all of us. We all have family, and it's not just people struggling with addiction. We all need wellness and recovery, right? So it's just trying to find different ways to be in community and not just be in this silo of residential treatment, you know? I think that was the second part to that question.
Thank you. And Jim Weichel has also an interesting question here for you, Maria. Have you met with any pushback regarding being unapologetic for who you are, calling things what they are, etc.?
Sometimes, you know, sometimes we'll get folks, as far as participants in the program, that and there's different ways to talk about it. You know, I would call it internalized oppression response, right? Where we'll push back and say, you know, well, I, you know, went to the military and I learned how to just fend for myself. And I, you know, we'll get that a lot of times, but we're very fortunate to have the opportunity to have people, you know, we encourage people to stay 6 months to a year. And because the approach, you know, of removing, you know, the deconstructing what professionalism is, and like, you know, nurturing a more person-centered, using harm reduction engagement, and just being people, right? Now we have safety. So now we don't have staff that's like triggering and re-traumatizing people. So we have good relationships here now that like we also bring them in with a lot of love and nurturing and support. And it doesn't have to be this power struggle of I'm right, you're wrong, you need to know this. But then doing something like, you know, taking them to an MMIW, you know, the guys were able to help paint an MMIW mural. And there was all these Native women there talking about it, and they hadn't heard those things. And so you don't have to drill people, it's just infusing them in the experience and hearing other people, because it builds empathy. You know, in recovery, we have to work to build empathy because that's something that gets compromised in our addiction. And so, yeah, I feel like there's always going to be that. But when you're demonstrating love and additional love, acceptance, and commitment, people soften. You know, people really soften and become open to those things. And in other spaces like management and training, you know, I feel very fortunate that I've been pretty okay with the team that I'm on.
Thank you. Anyone else who have comments or questions they want to ask Maria, or comments you want to share, or experiences you have had yourself?
Yes. Thank you, Noah Itty. Thank you, Maria, for sharing today and the work that you're doing, and kind of how you went through the education process, you know, your own family history dynamics, and then your education, and then implementing, you know, that cultural aspect, you know, of healing and recovery. You know, I know we said recovery, and I always like to say healing. I work with behavioral health program for addiction, recovery, and healing, and also prevention, all the preventions, drug and alcohol, suicide, gangs. But the main foundation is all culture. It's all culture based. Yeah, some of it is evidence based, you know, some of the evidence based programs that are out there, and some of it is just our practice based, you know, teachings and ways that we've had for thousands of years. And so what you're sharing and bringing them back to those cultural parts, and then you said empathy, and then that next part of empathy is compassion for people to support, you know, and become involved and actively involved in supporting. I know we can support through, you know, good words, encouragement, and prayers, but like actively becoming a part of that healing process, you know. So I really like what you were sharing today. You know, anything that talks about culture and traditional teachings and practices is that's what I love, and that's what I've seen in doing this work, and the people that end up in recovery or mental health co-occurring, that when we talk and we do these groups and sessions, they always say they got away from their culture and their teachings or whatever their family believed. If it was church or whatever they did, they got away from all of those ways, and then ended up, you know, outside of that circle of healing, way over here, way out here, you know, got so far away. That's where all the struggles started. And so that's one question I always like to ask, you know, like, what happened, you know, what happened, and what happened in your life, you know, and going back, like that history that you're talking about, like that historical part, I guess they call it historical trauma, but our family history or tribal history. And then I always hear that they got away from all those things, because when I do the sessions, I always use medicine, whether it's tobacco, sage, cedar, sweetgrass. I use those medicines, I burn them, you know, use them in those traditional ways. And some people tell me, I haven't smelled this since my mom died, dad died. And then that's when this started. You know, that's when I felt, that's when this other journey started for them, getting away from all of those ways. And so, yeah, thank you for sharing. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, and I just wanted to add on, you know, like, thank you for the work that you're doing too, Brian. And because, you know, there's nothing wrong with an indigenous person who's fighting for their life. And I think that's really important to say, because people get scared of that, right? Like, it's not like we're saying, you know, let's go up in arms and kill everybody. You know, that's not from here, not at all. What we're saying is that we have resistance in our DNA, and there's nothing wrong with fighting for your life. There's nothing wrong with speaking truth, right? And saying, like, I'm deserving of life. That's what we said, we all deserve to be here. And something happens when you tell somebody that's sitting in the chair, that's like been going through detox, that you deserve to be here. You know, the fact that you're getting well is your resistance, right? It's part of your warriorhood, and it's part of fighting, right? There's nothing wrong with instilling warriorhood and resistance into our people, and people shouldn't be scared of that. They are, but we're still here and we're still fighting for our lives. So I think it's important to say that dialogue is not always welcome, because people get scared about what that means, but we're fighting for our lives.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, and that warrior society, you know, some people think it's just going to battle, going to war, you know, being hard, being, you know, invincible. But that warrior society included all of those values, you know, that love, compassion, that support, encouragement from each other. No one, yeah, they did it individually, but then they also did, those societies were groups, you know, they helped and supported each other. That's kind of what I see when they get into recovery. You're getting help, you know, you're getting people to help you, finding that circle of support, circle of healing, circle of warriors. And warriors wasn't always fighting, you know, now you're fighting for your life maybe, but there was also love, respect for yourself, you know, for your people, your culture, your family, and kind of reconnecting that, you know, kind of reconnecting those things. So exactly what you're saying.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted all of you to be aware that Mike posted here in the chat about the Native programs in Alaska. and that they have been very successful in interweaving subsistence and cultural pillars with research-based treatment. And he shared some names of specific programs here. And I think Tamara have also shared some programs here in the chat for you guys if you want to take a closer look at that.
Thank you.
Anyone else who have comments or questions? Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to talk. To everyone, we have another session next Monday. Bridget Alensula will be talking to us about the Yoemi life skills curriculum. And I hope to see you all there. Please take a few moments to give us feedback on this session. We would love to hear from you. And thank you all for coming today. Thank you so much to Maria for sharing with us. I really appreciate it. And of course, I have appreciated knowing Maria for the last 2, if it's not 3 years, while she was a participant in the Leadership Academy. If you have questions about the Leadership Academy or this series, please feel free to reach out to me too. We're hoping we can start up another Leadership Academy, dependent on funding, but perhaps in the fall, and we will announce that on our listserv.
The link is not pulling up when I clicked on it.
Oh, Taylor, she's the expert here on the GIPRAS. Could you check if it's something? Could I have posted it?
Give me one moment.
Yeah. We will for sure check the link in the follow-up email before that is being sent out. So if you cannot provide feedback now, please do so when you get the follow-up email with the presentation slides. We would appreciate that.
Mine pulled up, but it did take a little bit to pull up. It was kind of slow to load.
Okay, I'm going to post it one more time before we let you guys go. Let me see here. Okay, someone says that there's finally loaded, so that's good.
Yeah, it does look like the evaluation link is taking a little bit to load. So we can try to coordinate with the evaluation team, but we will be sending an email with the link too, so we can do some troubleshooting. And then hopefully you guys are able to participate in that survey if it has been taking a while for you.
Okay, thanks everyone. We will close off the meeting now. Come back and see us next Monday. We'd love to have you then too. Thanks again, Maria.